Okay, so so we are just gonna kind of run through an example maybe. And I think that
Okay.
could work pretty well, and then you can kind of stop me along the way as you have
Okay.
questions. Um, so I have all of my data on the just like on a file, a pretty short file path. It doesn't really matter where you have it. Just if you have it in the box sync, I'm not sure if things will work through GIS because they don't like the space.
Right.
So if you're running data, I'd pull any. I don't store it locally. So that's
Okay.
the first bit. You can have. I don't really care what you have at this top level. I've got, like I'm working in a bunch of different basins. I assume you might just have one that's NT-at. Um,
Yeah.
we can run. What's a site? You guys are working out of Wenatchee, right? And
The
Lemhi.
NEAT. Yeah.
And you,
Um, y- yeah, I mean, we collect data in three watersheds, the Wenatchee, the NEAT, and the Methow. But I'm primarily focused on running gut on sites in the NEAT.
well, I don't have one on my computer right now, so we'll just do a different site that I haven't done
Okay.
yet. So
Okay.
we're gonna do this Lemhi site.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
And am I supposed to
And,
be viewing your
oh,
screen right now?
you are, you, thanks.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
Oh boy. Um, so anyway, yeah, this is my file path. I've got, so this is the Lemhi site that I have on my computer, and well, let's hopefully this like example run will work because I've never actually run this site. Um,
Okay.
so I have kind of an old file structure in here. Let me just, Sarah and I kind of edited this, so I'm just gonna do a couple things so that it's clean. Okay, so this is what it should look
So,
like. You'll have the lemhi, and then you'll want, I recommend doing this with a folder with your site name and then the visit number. And if you have multiple visits for that site, you could have a different folder for each visit. And then
okay.
when you go into here, you're going to have an inputs folder, and it should be named inputs with an S.
Okay.
And it's easiest to see. I'm going to open this in Art Catalog. Let's see. So you see these are the layers I have in it. And again, this is sort of a little bit of a, oh, this is a bad example because these aren't named properly. So we'll just do a site that I've did this morning.
Okay.
This is sort of Sarah and I cleaned up and polished up like what we want everything to be named. And this is something just to be aware of in that when you pull some of the data out of the survey geodatabases from CHAMP, which,
Hmm.
do I need to go over that or?
Um, if you wanted to, I mean, just depending on, I mean, the process of exporting feature classes from a geodatabase is not, I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that I don't need training on, but if there was like file names that were, needed, if, the files needed to be named a certain way, then maybe mentioning something about that would be useful.
Yeah, so these ones aren't named correctly. Let me go and show you
Okay.
one that is. These ones are. So the bankful should be, And this one I don't even, it's BF Polygon. So in some of the survey, this is actually good that I pulled up this one. In some of the survey geodatabases, it's called Bankful. And most of them, this is the case. You don't even need to change the name. It's just copying them over. But in some cases,
Hmm.
things are named a little bit weird in the database, and these are some of the alternate names that you might run into.
Okay.
The Bankful is the same thing as BF Polygon. The Bankful CL is the same as BFCL. Bankful XS, the same thing as BFXS. Um, capital DEM dot TIF, same thing as the DEM dot IMG. The Thalweg is generally named almost always the same thing, and the wee poly is the same thing as water extent.
Okay.
But in that document I gave to you, I should probably maybe add a little mapping of these names to each other, but
Right.
this the correct names are in that lot, that PDF that I sent on the email
Okay.
previously. So you do want them named correctly, and just for consistency, and just it makes it everything easier later.
Okay.
You're not going to break the code or anything if it's not named. You just have to do more work on a different part of it, and it might be harder to automate like a large batch. So if we're doing a lot, you might as well have them all right at the beginning.
Okay.
So let me do a different site because I don't really feel like naming everything again. I ran this own site and this is right where I'm at. I need to kind of go through this one look like it's named good. Well, so we'll just copy this. So this is the way that your folder is going to look like right at the beginning. So
Okay, just one folder called inputs.
one
Okay.
folder called inputs, and with
Okay.
these files that I was showing you in GIS or in the art catalog there. So the one I just am at now is we're going to run this North Fork F2P1 site, and you'll have these. Okay. The next thing is I sent you a zipped folder with the gut code.
Yeah.
I don't really care where you guys keep that. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But I have it under like here's my data, and then I have it here. Is this? I think yours is like PyGut2. Don't worry about that 2 at the end. Mine's just named slightly different on this computer. It's the same version.
Okay.
So you'll just have a folder that says PyGut2, and then when you open it, this is what you're gonna see. You don't edit any of these, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Okay.
That's Sarah's code, and don't mess with it. Just leave it, but it needs to be in the same folder as this config file. So basically,
Okay.
unzip that folder, leave it as is. The one thing that you will use out of here and you can edit is this config file. So if you open this in idle, or whatever text editor, or some sort of Python thing that you can see the actual code. My computer just has this one. It's the bare bones. I have another one, but it's just easy to open it here. So there's a little upper thing that it kind of explains what all the parameters are. There's the main one that you're going to change when you want to run it is you want to specify the file path to where that inputs folder is here. So
Okay.
the the one that we're running, let me think here. Oh, I'll just find the one that we're running. Okay, so I often just do it this way, where I find it and then I, copy this. Thing to important is leave the R out in front. That just tells
Okay.
Python that that's a file path, because Windows has if you're running this in Windows, it's got the slashes going the other direction. So you need the R, or else it's not going to recognize that as a file path. So I've got my visit. I'd set this to run 1 because this is our first run. And you can then, you see, you could have a different name on your inputs folder if this was called, you change this on all these config files, but it's just easier to have these named as they are, then you have to change any of this stuff in your config file.
Right.
Does that
Okay.
make sense? I mean, it's not like a do or
Yeah.
die if you don't have a name, but it's just easier to have it all the same. But if you happen to have something named different, you could change it here. And then I don't have this manual thalweg is for like if you're making manual thalwegs, and that's in the second video. And I don't think I'll go over that
Yeah.
right
So
now, or maybe you do want
okay.
to.
So well, that I don't know. I mean, I don't. Maybe sometime down the road, but is that a requirement to have a thawag underscore manual shape file?
No.
Okay.
It's not a requirement, but I will kind of show you like why you might want to do it. But the thalweg is just the one that's pulled from Champ, whatever they identified as thalweg.
Yep.
And basically, how good this layered is will impact which, if you miss some riffles or miss some, basically it helps pull out the riffles. So if the thalweg actually isn't going over like riffle crest, you're not going to see that riffle, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's not going to know it's there because it looks along the thalweg and then pulls those features out by that. The one thing, this bowl percentile kind of changes the size of your residual pools. It's a parameter you can fiddle with. So you think you get something that is reasonable for your site. Sarah really likes just the 50th percentile. I sometimes prefer the 75th. This is the 75th will give you, your pools will be smaller than the 50th. But that's kind of what it does. And the same, this plain percentile is actually something that is controlling how much you see as bars. So you can play around with that. We found that 25 is actually pretty stable for looking pretty good. But at the beginning, when you might want to play around with a couple sites and decide for your watershed and for your purposes, your questions that you're asking, what parameter those parameters, what you might want to do. And I would, once you decide, I'd just keep them the same for all the runs. Otherwise, it'll be very, I don't think your analysis, it would be really hard to have a consistent comparison because you're interested in the comparative analysis.
Right.
So, yeah, it's worth playing around with it at first, but don't play around with it for every run once you decide what to do.
Okay.
The last thing is that you don't actually need the bank full cross sections for running the tier 2 output, but it is here. If you want to, you could run the tier 3 output and see what it looks like. So if you wanted to add a tier 3 output, you would unhash this, but it's still sort of in development, and I'm actually not sure if we made a bunch of changes to tier 2, and I'm actually not sure if it still runs right now or not. But I think it does. Sorry, I got a little crying baby. Okay. So once you have that how you want it, you got run 1, got 2.0, that's fine. You just run it. So whatever you're running your code out of, there's a run button usually, and you just, oh, I gotta save it first. And then you just sit here and wait while it runs. Hopefully, it's not a very big site, so I think this isn't gonna take that long. And looks like my license for GIS is about to run out, so I have to deal with that.
So you can run the code just like you're running it in Python shell.
Yeah, I'm just
Uh,
running it out of
can you run it? Can you run it out of like Notepad plus plus too, or
probably. Um,
okay?
if you could
So
probably,
you don't need to install it. It's not like an ArcGIS add-in at the time, is it?
well, I mean, it does need ArcGIS installed on the computer because it has ArcPy like codes and stuff. So, oh no, what's wrong? Parameters are not valid. Haven't gotten this one before. Um, well, things happen. I'll run it on one I ran earlier this morning. Hopefully, I'll have to ask Sarah. It might have something to do with the threshold. Well, that was a bad example. Just ran smoothly for the video. Do that one. But when you do run it, you do see it creates these folders. So
Okay.
at the beginning, we had the inputs folder. And then after you run it, it's going to have an evidence layer folder and outputs folder. And the outputs, it's going to create, this is the version we're running, and then it's going to create this run that we did. And it got through the tier 1 output. So it kind of crashed on the tier 3, and so you're not seeing it, or the tier 2, so you're not seeing it in there. It also creates a bunch of sort of like evidence layers that you could pull into GIS. But as far as running it, you really can just run it. If you have Python on your computer and you have some sort of Python shell, you can just run it from there. We haven't made it into like a tool that you add into GIS.
Okay.
I want to just run it on the site that I ran it earlier today because I know it has worked fine. So it's this one. So this is me just running it on another site.
Okay.
Oh, visit 3949. Does that sound daunting, or like it's actually easier than having to deal with I think the plugin stuff.
Yeah. No, I that should be fine. Yeah. I'm just curious.
So I'm just gonna run it on this site here. Let's play around with this plane percentile because I haven't run it like I ran it at 25 earlier today, so I'll just run it at 50 so that we can compare them. I think so. This looks good. I already have a run 1, 2, and 3 in that folder, so I'm gonna make this run 4. If I had run 1 there, it would give me an error because there is already a run 1 folder here and it won't overwrite. So just make sure that, and I'll show you that here. Like, let's see. if you have, this is it, inputs, output, like I have runs 1, 2, 3, so this will be run 4.
Okay.
And yeah, hopefully this, I don't know, I might just need to double check that's inputs and stuff. Again, ArcGIS. So we are running ArcGIS in the background. That's why it's popping up with that, like that little error thing. And this is running a lot faster because I already have those evidence layers computed. Once you run this once, it creates all those evidence layers and it sees them and it doesn't have to calculate them again. So it runs a lot faster if you're running repeat runs on the same visit.
Okay.
So that ran successfully. It's it's done. So I could pull this. So this is now I'm in ArcMap, and this is the best, probably this, or you could view it in R. You could plot them with a spatial thing in R, but I think you'll probably just end up plotting them here. I'm gonna just add a new group layer, and let's add, see, this is the 3949, the right visit, and you got outputs, gut 2.0, run 4. So it created that run 4 that wasn't there before. And here's your outputs. The config settings text file is useful because it'll tell you, it pretty much prints out your configure file. So you know what all your variables were. It also prints out these values. So your integrated bank full width that it used, and this wall slopes threshold it used. So basically I think it's anything above 16% is considered a wall when you're looking at the forms or bank. So
Is that a setting that can be adjusted, or
right
is that
in this version, no, but we
okay?
can. It generally comes out looking pretty good so far. If you run into output that you're like, this is really weird, then we can contact Sarah, and it probably should be soft coded, but it isn't right now.
Okay.
So no, you can't. short story. So if I just add these, then I've added this run. I'll just bring the cancel. I kind of just want to bring the stall wig up prop. So we ran this. I think I had a Q75 and then a Q50 for the mounds. Okay. Once you have it loaded, it's nice because we have some layer files that you guys can use. So
Okay.
the layer files, if you go to import, they are in that PyGut folder that I gave you guys. There's a folder called gut symbology and a bunch of layer files. So this is the tier 2 in channel raw. I want to attribute this based on the forms, like those bulls the bulls mounds kind of thing. So I can click this one. Yeah, that's what I like to attribute on. So that's this map.
Okay.
So this site has you see the mounds. This is a Q75 for the it's actually a threshold for how much planar stuff there is. That second threshold, and you can compare this output. This is actually be quite illustrative here. Oops, I'm going to take off the contours so you can see it. To this output, it's the same site. The difference here, oops, is that you can see there's just a lot more of that planar, that yellow unit. It's less sensitive to things being protruding or carved out. Generally, we've found that leaving that at Q25 is better, and it works really well for almost all sites. So that second variable is good usually at Q25, but the ones that the bowl percentile threshold, which is that other one, kind of you can play with it, and I'll show you what it looks like. The bowl percentile right now we have at Q75, which is kind of more restrictive. It makes for the smallest residual pools. This is a version, you see you got some pools coming in that weren't there before. That's like Q50. And then here's this one, they get like a little bigger, more connected. This site isn't that sensitive to that. I mean, it's different, but not a lot different between the three. Some sites you'll see a bigger difference.
Okay. Is there a margin class or a transition class? I mean, I'm not a margin. I mean a transition zone class.
So yeah,
the tier 2.
the best way to do that right now is so we have that tier 1 output. So if you open this attribute table, right now we've got, based on the water extent that you guys input, so you could input different water extent polygons and get different outputs and then overlay them, but we do have these emergent submerged units here in this flow unit category. And what you can do here is if you go to tier 1 and let's just, I just want to, I'll show you where the attribute file for this is actually. We're going to look through here. If you take this flow unit layer symbology, we're going to add it to there. It'll symbolize on that flow unit, which is that submerged emergent high. And now what you can see is, I think the transition zones, if I was doing analysis, I would take these areas that are submerged bars. So you can do an intersect, but we've kind of done it for you guys right now. I don't know if this capability will be kept in the code or not, but that's why there's these 3 different tier 2 files. One is a raw file, and there's tier 2 in channel, and these are essentially exactly the same right now. It's because in order to move to tier 3, you might want to edit, and Sarah wanted to keep one copy that people don't ever edit. And another copy where like you might want to start editing the polygons and splitting them before pulling into tier 3. And so you would edit this tier 2 in channel layer, and you just leave the raw as is. So if you want to do any editing of the automatic map, this would be where to do it. Say you're like, I don't really want to show these little tiny pools. Maybe I'll just make them all, merge them with the same unit in the background. Stuff like that. You just do that in this layer.
Okay.
But this flow type one, if you open the attribute on that one, essentially all this flow type one is an intersect of your tier 2 and this tier 1 flow unit. So you could search for submerged, and you'd want to look for mounds. So we could do something like that, select by attributes, and you could go, let's see, flow unit equals unique submerged, and unit form equals mound, apply. Oh, which one did I open? I feel like maybe I don't have the right. I'm just not seeing anything selected. One second. You see anything selected? I see the table. Oh, I know. I hear it. It's not on. There we go. It's not. And this one isn't symbolized, so it's kind of import. Oh, that didn't do that. Import. Sorry. I'll just do it this way. Oops. Yeah, unit form. There we go. So you can see by selecting those two values, it's selecting these, bar edges, which could be useful as a transitional analysis.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just looking at the results from the site, I could imagine wanting to potentially merge, or maybe just see what an output of just the shape would look like.
Okay, so you can.
Because it seems like the shape would be kind of like lumping, whereas like the form is more of a splitting output.
Yeah, basically the shape is more lumped into 3 categories. The form, you
Right.
have 4 or 5 categories, and then once you get to tier 3, it's split even further. So you could, yeah, essentially what that shape one is going to look like is that anything that's orange is going to be red. Anything that's blue of any color is going to be all one blue color, and everything that's yellow is going to stay yellow. So you can do that right now because you just need to symbolize it differently. So you could look at this and you could go properties and you'll be like, oh, actually, I want to look at.
Okay, because it's just a field, and I see it's the field in the attribute table. Okay, cool.
So you could do that unit shape class file here. Let's turn that on and this on here. So that might look something like that. Right now, this one is the one that's kind of got a really too high of a threshold for this planar unit. That's why it's like a lot of it is yellow. That's why I was experimenting that with that Q50, seeing what it would look like. And yeah, we have found that keeping that at steady Q25 is usually just all around the best. But you could symbolize, any of these, or if you want to run an analysis, you could merge to make sure that all the polygons are the same, or add those areas together, or kind of manipulate it if you wanted to.
Okay.
Because you have the attributes and you can have all the shapes and the areas, so you can do stuff with that.
Okay, cool. Sweet.
The manual Thalwigs, you asked about that.
Yeah.
So I have a Thalwig. So see this layer here? So this is the Thalwig out of Champ, right? And really it's like split flow here.
Yeah.
And maybe I want to pull out a riffle, like let me just show you something with our riffles here. So the riffle routine or the saddle routine, basically it looks along the thalweg for where it goes up, and then it comes back down along a thalweg, and then it's pulling out sort of the contours around there. So it's pulling out these sort of saddle-y shapes, but only where there's a thalweg going through it. So it's going to miss, like, for example, here's one of those shapes right here. Here's a saddle in the contours. It's
Yeah.
not gonna recognize that as a riffle unless there's a thalweg going through. So that's would be a reason why you might want to add a manual thalwegs, and you just edit and add some thalwegs. I did that earlier for this site, and I need to talk to Sarah because like I ran it again and it's still not. It didn't. I don't know. It it works really well on the champ thalwegs for whenever there's this pattern, and it's not pulling this one out, and I'm not sure where it should be, and it's not pulling this one out. There it might pull one out from here. I'm not sure. There's some thresholds that she uses too, so I need to like ask her about it. But if you guys are really wanting to make like to do it, I'd make the thalwegs, run it, see if it pulls it out, and if it doesn't, and you really want it, get back to us because it's something
Okay.
it's something we have to correct anyway. It's just might help push it forward.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is, when we teach people about Talwag, when they're surveying a site, we teach them that it's a feature that could be like the deepest part of the channel, like the lowest elevation in that like area, but then also it's oftentimes a place where the flow is concentrated, so you see higher velocities in those areas too. And when those two characteristics coincide, then that's a pretty good indication that that's the FOAG.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that where our crews are drawing their FOAG or surveying their FOAG in, and then editing that in GIS when they're post-processing the sites, that it may not always coincide with the deepest area or the lowest elevations just because of that other like flow characteristic, especially in planar areas where flow is more dispersed across like a plain bed area. So I don't know if you've kind of seen issues with that, or if that's a non-issue.
It's generally pretty good. And you
Okay.
can like I haven't edited. Like you could go in there too and not adding for split flow, but just editing the thalweg to make sure it's in the middle of these V's, the contour V's.
Yeah.
But as you can see, this is a
Yeah.
champ. This is a champ thalweg, and they did a pretty good
Pretty
job.
good.
Here, well, this is
Yeah.
confusing though, because the flow, it does, I would say
Split.
that it's probably more
Yeah.
likely it moves like that, and then there's a split flow that goes down here. So if I really wanted to get nitpicky and edit this layer, because I really want to capture, I don't even think it would capture this riffle here because it's not really, I don't know, I would probably anyway call this a plain bed. But it could be, someone could call this a riffle because it's kind of moving across this bar, this elevated kind of surface. It comes from here to this channel and moves across this bar, then goes back into this more carved out channel. So, you could go in and be like, actually, I want to see a thalweg coming here, but now you have a channel that's going off into the floodplain here. And then didn't serve it at all. But just so that you know that when you're pulling out saddles, it's sensitive to thalweg placement. But generally it does a pretty good job. but you might want to QA/QC a little bit your sites, your Thalwigs, just to make sure that you're capturing the important areas or it looks good enough for your purposes. Um,
Okay.
and generally you could run it first, and if it depends on your analysis and how picky you want to be about it, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Just kind of the importance of the FAWAG in the coding of the tool. Um, yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
explaining that.
Yeah. So that might be why you might want to edit and do a manual Thalwig, the layer, which,
Okay.
or just even if you guys just wanted to edit uh, the Thalwig layer that has just to move it to one side or the other or whatnot. But sometimes having the topography and the contouring really helps. It's easy to do it after you run the code because the code spits out the contour layer in the evidence file. So if you go
Right.
to
Okay. Yeah, that's
the
pretty sweet.
results, yeah. So if I go to results, this evidence layer has DEM contours that it used. That these are the contours it used to pull out the riffles. So you can see if something is happening that's screwy with the riffle code or anything like that. Or if you just want to use the contours, it's right here. These contour nodes is basically the points that it's recognizing to look at pulling out riffles. And Sarah does a routine that looks at the slope. She looks at like these series of ups and downs and then looks at the slope on either side and recognizes this point here where it bridges the two and pulls them out. So you can see it's recognizing this area as a potential riffle. So it's a way, and I'm not sure. Oh, never mind. This contour nodes is basically she's just creating points at each crossing with the Thalweg.
Yep.
So you can, that's all it is. So sometimes you'd be like, okay, why is it missing something? And it might be because just the way that it might not be capturing the nodes, but it looks like it's okay. Maybe this one didn't get pulled because it's too near the edge and she might have a requirement of 3 nodes past it or something
Okay.
like that. So I'm wondering if that's the case. I'd have to ask her. You can play around with some of those other evidence layers. Channel margin, she's got some other stuff. You can look at the residual topography. It's like sort of this raster that shows we have discrete classes that we've made things, but these residual topographies are more like a gradational scale. Um, so that we threshold at those Q value, the quantile values at the Q75 or the Q50, and that's how some of these bars and pools are getting pulled out. But you can go back to the outputs there to see.
Okay.
It looks like she has a slope raster if you guys wanted to play around with the slope. Maybe, summarize slope by feature or by category. Looks like you can do that. I don't know, you know. So there's other outputs that you can play around with.
Okay.
Yeah. It looks, yeah, in channel DM. I don't know. What last thing important to notice, if you change a Thalweg layer and you want to rerun the gut code, you need to delete the evidence layers folder, or at least because the code will look at in the evidence folder, and if the contours or the nodes already exist in there, it's not going to recreate them every time.
Okay.
So
That's good to know. Okay.
yeah, So if you make another Thalweg, or you move it, we need to recreate those nodes layer. And so just delete the whole
And
evidence folder is the easiest way
okay,
to do it. And
because
just,
it doesn't rewrite, it doesn't write over
no,
that folder.
no.
Okay.
It's nice because it'll pull from it so you can do a lot of runs quickly that way, like if you wanted to play around with other things. But it's yeah, it doesn't overwrite when you change the manual, do any manual edits. So, I feel like that should give you guys enough to get started. Do you have any other?
Yeah, no, that's a thorough tutorial, and it makes sense. So yeah, I think that should be good. And I guess we can just be in touch if we have any questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can do a lot with it once you have it, so you can play around with it. I'd be interested to see what you guys end up doing. I guess that is worth
Yeah, sure.
showing you that I've been working on some code using the output in R, doing
Okay.
some summary statistics for like site complexity. So I've got, and this is under development right now, that you guys could probably also use if you were interested in like site, oops, not that one, site level metrics. Let's see, what am I calculating? Wait, oh, there they are. So I've got the percentage of area taken up by each form unit. That's a P area. I've also in addition to that, I have a unit exactly like we were talking about, the submerged bars. Oh, do it this way. I think it's, yeah. So I have, oh, no, I need unit summary 1. 1 second. So I have something that I call bar face. And that's basically, it's one of those form units that's the submerged parts of the bars. And then, so I'm calculating stuff like the percentage of area taken up along the whole site from each form, the border complexity of each of the types of units. So it's like the perimeter divided by the area as like an index.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the total length of borders on the whole site. So all the boundary areas summed up divided by the whole site area as sort of more of a site complexity metric. And then I'm computing, looks like number of crossings along the Thalweg per 10 meter. So if I have the Thalweg, how many times do I have a unit border crossing it? And then number of crossings, which is what's showing here is the number of crossings along like 20, average of number of crossings along 20 cross sections. And having that as a metric to be able to compare the site complexity from multiple sites. So you're interested in transitions, and that's like a one number type of value thing that you might be able to use.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, yeah, that seems like a valuable effort that you're working on to try to come up with some metrics to use to characterize site complexity.
Right, more than just like showing the maps and just saying there's this.
Yeah, that there should be habitat complexity here, and I mean, because that's used quite a bit with like justification for restoration projects. Like we need to increase the habitat complexity, and kind of everyone, I think, at least in the circles that I'm involved with, kind of have their own kind of picture of what that might be, but no one really actually talks about it
Yeah.
because there's no I don't think there's like a standard kind of um, terminology for how to define
Yeah.
it.
I think part of the problem is there hasn't really been a standard way to map. So without that,
Right.
it's pretty difficult to have a standard way to come up with a metric to compare. But I think
Yeah.
having at
Well,
least
that's cool.
this tier two output, which is, I mean, it's pretty robust really, and it's not that sensitive to. There's not a lot of subjectivity in your choices, so of where these things get
Right.
drawn. Which I think allows us to uniformly apply it over a lot of area, and then you could apply these metrics.
Yep.
Um,
That's great.
so yeah, we'll have this code, and then there's another code that we've written that will summarize things by unit. Um, so you could look at
Okay.
some sort of predictor variable by unit, or slope or curvature or whatever you want, really. Elevation, average elevation by unit, what type, whatever you desire.
Okay.
So the first thing is to get all the maps.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, that is great. I really appreciate you taking the time to review this with me, and it seems pretty straightforward. Um, yeah. So Joe said you in your email you said that Joe is planning to get this up and running on the
Yeah,
Riverscape tool.
so he pulled Sarah from helping us finish polishing this off, so that there's still a couple of glitches, right? Because he wants her to kind of put a mock Riverscapes thing together. The idea is that it'll be up on Riverscapes at probably some point, but I don't know if it's not going to be fast enough for your early August deadline. Um,
Yeah.
so it kind of make a choice if you want to spend the time just doing like a sampling of your sites for your August meetings, and then wait till you have it
Yeah.
up on Riverscapes to run the whole set, or if you want to just like, maybe I just get going on this now. Um, it's kind of up to you.
Okay. Well,
Because you never
I
know, things
can
get
kind of
kicked down the road, like I don't know.
yeah, priorities shift around pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can keep in touch and let you know where we're headed and with this analysis, and then yeah. So that, I mean, this is great that you're able to share this with us and get us going on it.
Yeah. So, and you could, if you had someone handy with a little bit of R, you could write, or Python, you could write up batch process it, kind of like you could have some sort of table that has all of your file paths for each of your runs that you want to do, and then have the code step through, apply this, these configure settings, apply these configure settings and run, apply the, like some over and over.
Okay.
But you could set up something like that. Eric Wall might be able to help. Uh, and I might be,
Okay.
we're probably going to be developing something like that in the next few weeks, but I don't want to promise anything.
Okay.
Whoever gets to it first, kind of deal.
Yeah.
But it is entirely pretty possible to do that, and for someone who knows what they're doing, it can be pretty quick to write something like that. So, especially if you have all of the file
Okay.
names really consistently named and everything like that, it could be not too bad. And then you could have it run overnight.
Okay.
The problem is that sometimes if it comes into a glitch, you might not realize it right away, and then you have to, you know,
Address the error.
it might not run everything. Well, I would do it in smaller
Yeah.
batches anyway.
Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate it. The time spent going over this with me, and I'll let you know how it goes. And I'm gonna work with the technician tomorrow and have him get started on preparing all the inputs,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna probably play around with a couple of sites just to kind of get familiar with the outputs and what some of the results look like for some of the sites, and then make a game plan for what FOWAG, how much attention we would want to spend on editing the FOWAG and making the manual FOWAG layer. And then, looking at probably the different settings for mounds and planes or bowls and planes or whatever.
Yeah. Mainly I found looking at just like the Q75, Q50, and Q25 for the bowls, and the planer one, like you're probably going to get good results leaving it at Q25, just from our experience.
Q25.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, have fun with it. I recorded this phone call, so I'll just upload that to YouTube too, and so you guys can have access to it
Okay.
as a review.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you soon.